When Neon White was finally released on June 16, 2022, it received rapturous praise from critics and fans alike for its characters, gameplay, music, and the wealth of content. Thanks in part to a release date reveal at the extremely popular Summer Games Fest, the game also received a ton of exposure and blew up on Twitch. Because of all these factors, the game's speedrunning community exploded upon its full release, with tons of new people flocking to the game. When a game first releases, it's in a period that I like to call the honeymoon period. Everyone is learning the game simultaneously, trying to save as much time as possible and figure out exactly what the optimal strategies are. Mistakes will be frequent, but as long as you continue your runs, you can still get big PBs or even big world records. In this period, the only limit to how fast you can play the video game is how much time you're willing to pour into it. The more you play, the better you'll become. Just like the demo, IL runs proved to be the most popular category for Neon White speedrunning. After all, there were now over 100 levels to optimize. As such, a full game run wouldn't be performed until the following day, and the person to do so was none other than Idol. Now I'll preface this by saying that Idol most likely had other world records before her 52, but this is the first run that was recorded. Also, this is the first recorded run to use the new timing method for full game RTA that every other run from this point forward would use, Level Rush. Level Rush is a mode that is unlocked after you beat the main game. It allows you to complete every level in an even faster format than the New Game Plus method that the demo used. What's even better is the fact that it gives you an in-game time at the end of the run, eliminating the need for you to use an auto splitter or manually add up every IL time to get a final IGT time for the run. The Level Rush category that plays every main mission from start to finish is called White's Heaven Rush, which is the category we'll be looking at for the rest of the video. Anyway, now that that's out of the way, let's take a look at Idol's run. Just like the demo, White's Heaven Rush begins in Rebirth, where Idol would perform nearly every single strat that she went for in her 4:37 demo run. Blazing through Rebirth with an in-game time of 2 minutes and 21 seconds, she would then reach the second world of the game, Killer Inside, which features a few of the demo levels, as well as some brand new ones. The difficulty ramps up slightly when you enter Only Shallow, which contains some brutal levels. The final chapter of early game is the Old City. The third level, the Clock Tower, gives us our first boss fight against Neon Green. You need to shoot crystals scattered around the map to lower his shield, allowing you to damage him. Each time all of the crystals are destroyed triggers a damage phase, and each damage phase marks the end of a cycle. What the game doesn't tell you, however, is that you can actually damage Neon Green in between the cycles, if you're able to hit him while he is spawning new crystals. These shots are difficult to hit since he is moving the whole time, but with precise aim, you can chip off some extra health. This extra damage, plus a massive shortcut known as Clock Tower Skip, allowed her to skip 2 phases. Or, it would have, but she barely didn't do enough damage, and had to quickly improvise with an early kill on the next cycle. She still ended the fight in an impressive 1 minute flat. The next chapter, The Burn That Cures, continues to amp up the difficulty even more, and introduces a new weapon that wasn't in the demo. Fireball, a medium-range shotgun that gives you a boost with a lingering hurt box. Covenant begins at the demo level Hanging Gardens, and later introduces 2 new enemies, the Shocker and the Trapwire. Reckoning is largely the same as Covenant, though it includes more complex levels and introduces the Mimic Chests. Idol's run didn't do hardly any non-developer intended skips in these 3 worlds, so they'll be looked over for now. Benediction introduces the Dominion card from the demo level Streak. Idol played this world largely as intended outside of Streak, but the raw power of Dominion's rocket boosts and grappling hook meant that many skips were possible. Apocrypha brings players back down to Earth with some extremely brutal gauntlets that require you to kill dozens of enemies. Idol cleared these levels out with relative ease. After Apocrypha comes the Third Temple, which has 2 of the most interesting levels in the game. Holy Ground is a largely scenic trek through these magnificent ruins. Idol was able to use a shortcut with 2 Godspeed boosts to skip about half the level, and finish it in just 1 minute and 24 seconds. Then there's a second level, also called the Third Temple, which contains the second Neon Green boss fight. This level is quite possibly the most complex in the whole run, and it's where speedrunners save the most time over casual players. Let's break it all down. The third temple contains 7 damage cycles, one that goes through an inner temple, one that ends on the steps outside, one that ends on the strip of the water rivers, one that ends much higher after a series of aerial grapples, one that ends after a descent, one that ends at the very top of the temple, and one that ends all the way up in the sky. The 7th cycle repeats until you defeat Neon Green. Casually, it takes players 8 cycles to defeat Neon Green if they do not get any additional hits in between. Idle nearly skipped the 8th cycle after getting a couple of early hits, but for now, she'd have to settle with a time of 3 minutes and 34 seconds. Still much faster than the average time. For comparison's sake, the required time to earn an Ace medal, Neon White's highest rank, is 3 minutes and 57 seconds, and the required time to achieve a gold medal is 4 minutes and 25 seconds. 1000 Pound Butterfly is unique among the game's worlds, since it does not require you to kill enemies before unlocking the goal. It also gives you an extremely powerful new card, the Book of Life, which locks onto any enemy and instantly kills them. You might think this lock-on range would be limited to a few feet, but no, it extends across massive stretches of the game's maps. This can be seen most easily during the final level of 1000 Pound Butterfly, Marathon. As the title suggests, this level is intended to be a long and arduous trek through many obstacles. The game expects you to beat it in about 2 minutes, but Idle would do this. This is Marathon Skip, and it allowed Idle to finish this level in just 45 seconds, saving well over a minute over playing the level normally. It turns out that Ace Medal isn't the highest rank in the game. There's an even better rank, Red Ace, which represents the developer times. The Red Ace requirement for Marathon is a minute and 31 seconds, so Idle absolutely destroyed that time with this skip. But it's a lot harder than it looks. Take a look at those tripwire enemies that she's locking onto. Killing them causes the previous tripwire's hitbox to immediately appear, and if you don't strafe in the correct direction, you will be instantly killed. In order to perform this trick correctly, you need to perform multiple strafes perfectly, and not die a single time. And this is the second to last level in the entire run, so you'll probably have to deal with nerves too. Idle performed each strafe flawlessly, and the skip, along with clean movement throughout each of the levels, helped her to finish the entire world of 1000 Pound Butterfly in just 5 minutes and 23 seconds. The final boss fight against Neon Green is not quite as complex as the first two. Like the third temple, there are 7 damage cycles, and the fact that you only damage Green with the Book of Life means that you cannot skip any of these cycles. It also makes much of your movement throughout the level a series of lock-ons until you finally rid yourself of all the crystals and damage Green. Don't be fooled, however, this is still an extremely tough fight, as evidenced by Idle's multiple deaths to this level in the run. But once she finished, the run would end with a time of 52 minutes and 35 seconds. All in all, a pretty solid showcase for the game, and a great starting point for the category. Idle would later improve her record by over 5 minutes, largely through cleaning out the big mistakes in her previous run, such as the missed cycle skip in Clock Tower, and the 2 deaths in Absolution. The run clocked in at 47 minutes and 22 seconds, and was the first to break the 50-minute barrier. But then, she stopped running White's Heaven Rush. Idle simply didn't have the motivation to do full game runs anymore. Her stated reason? Burnout.
In the demo, I just found the game fun. I thought it would be fun to play full game because I found full game way more fun than grinding for IL times because of the RNG bullet spread in the demo made a lot of ILs really annoying. So I just decided, hey, this game's kind of fun. I have free time. For my 52:35, I believe, my motivation for doing that at the time was because Crash was working on the auto splitter and he asked me for help to test it out. So I was like, okay, sure, I'm down to test it. My 47, I also did that because I was asked to help test the new version of the auto splitter. I didn't really have much motivation to be like, I wanted to claim day one records. It was more of just, I wanted to help out my friend. My burnout from full release was like entirely because of the demo, because the demo got to the point where full game strats it pretty much just became, can you consistently hit the strats and you just got to get lucky with RNG. I know I didn't need to do it, I just wanted to do it because I found it fun.
Now that Idle had bowed out, it was time for other players to take their turns in the spotlight. The first to do so was Crash B, a runner who had held a tied world record in the demo, and created invaluable resources for the community such as the Level Rush auto splitters. He achieved a 50.08 in between Idle's world records. After the 47, another top demo runner, Tacky Tactics, would be the next player to achieve world record with a 46.40. Then Crash would take the world record back with a 45.43. Just one day later, Tacky took the world record back with a 42.13. With a ton of hard work and practice, he would soon become much more consistent and dramatically lower his times. He achieved the first ever sub 40 time with a 39.31, lowered that time down to 38.33, and lowered it again to 37.23, all within the span of a week. The work that Tacky put into both practicing and optimizing every level in the game was on full display, because Tacky was the first player to be able to marry strong consistency with difficult strats that saved a lot of time. He had, in a few short days, not only lowered the record by 8 minutes, but sailed far ahead of anyone else. He was, simply put, in a league of his own. Let's take a closer look at his 37.23 and compare it to the first one we looked at, Idle's 52, to see how Tacky was saving so much more time. Tacky didn't save much over Idle in early game. That section pretty much had all its major time save maxed out. There were 2 levels, however, where Tacky saved a lot of time. In Idle's run, the level Canals in Only Shallow was played largely as intended, with only a small sequence break at the end. The strat that Tacky was doing now was to shoot this barrel all the way over there while still moving, then play the level as intended, until he got to this barrel here, use the barrel boost plus an elevate card to vault over the wall, shoot those 2 barrels over there, use this barrel to bounce back up, kill these enemies below, shoot the last 2 explosive barrels, and use the last elevate card to reach the goal. There was also a strat that he used in Forgotten City, where instead of playing the level as intended, he used a Godspeed boost to skip a large portion of the level, and sniped the enemies that he left behind. This looks like it would save a lot of time, but it actually saves barely any if you perform it poorly. Where Tacky started saving a lot of time over Idle was in mid-game, where he implemented every single dev-intended shortcut, and some shortcuts that were decidedly not dev-intended. Some of the most impressive ones are this shortcut in Arcs, where you activate the explosive barrels from outside the wall, this one in Greenhouse where you can swing around the left side of the level, barely land on these steps, shoot the chests, and extend the Stomp Hurt box through the wall to beat the level with just 1 Stomp card. And this one in Mayhem, where you shoot specific mimic chests to create chain reactions that wipe out all the enemies in the main area. Tacky's Heaven's Edge in particular was far more advanced than Idle's, with major skips in nearly every level. The one level that remained largely the same was Mirror, but don't worry, that level will get plenty of time to shine later on. In Holy Ground, Tacky implemented 2 new shortcuts, one using a Godspeed boost at the beginning, and another using a Dominion grapple at the end. These 2 skips saved him about 27 seconds over Idle. Then, in Third Temple, Tacky implemented 5 cycle skip by killing green in the second damage cycle, finishing the fight in a blindingly fast 1 minute and 47 seconds, and saving 2 minutes and 20 seconds over Idle. 5 cycles is the most that you could skip, since you can only do so much damage to green during and in between the cycles. It's extremely tricky to pull off, but it's the biggest time save in the entire run, saving a whole 30 seconds over killing green in the 3rd cycle. So by this point, it was well worth going for. By far, the world that Tacky saved the most time in over Idle, however, was 1000 Pound Butterfly, where he'd unlock the full potential of the Book of Life, and its incredibly broken lock-on range. With just 4 levels to go, Taki entered Congregation, home to one of the game's scariest skips. Normally, you would have to traverse through this entire Coliseum area, then go around the outside using the Book of Life, before making your way back in and teleporting between enemies to reach the goal. Instead of doing that, Taki did this. This trick, which I've dubbed the Leap of Faith, requires extreme precision. If you don't manage to lock onto the stomp enemy, you will fall into the pit, die, and lose nearly 30 seconds. Sometimes the game will barely lock on, then you'll lose the lock on, and you will die. If you do manage to get the trick, you save 6 seconds. Most people would say it doesn't seem worth going for, but Taki wasn't afraid. He'd take whatever time save he could get. Going into Marathon, Taki performed a more advanced version of the Marathon skip, where he used even more of the tripwire enemies hanging above the map, and skipped much more of the level. He unfortunately died on his first attempt, costing him the first 36-minute time, but was still able to finish 1000-Pound Butterfly in 3 minutes and 3 seconds. A whole 2 minutes and 20 seconds faster than Idol. One clean Absolution fight later, and he would finish with a new world record. Despite achieving a time that any player could be proud of, Taki continued to grind. He wanted more. He wanted a complete and utter victory. But the game was still new, and competition was fierce. It had been too long since someone had challenged Taki, but that someone would finally arrive, and their name was Azure. Azure was a newcomer to Neon White speedrunning, but he was an established partner streamer on Twitch who had earned top times in games such as The Forgotten City, The Talos Principle, Rocket Robot on Wheels, Portal 2, Yooka-Laylee, Dishonored 2, The Turing Test, and Left 4 Dead 2. As soon as the full Neon White came out, he went hard on grinding the game, pushing it further than it had ever been pushed before. By June 26, 2022, he had come as close as 1 second away from Taki's world record. And then just a few hours later, in the midnight hour of June 27th, he did it. He smashed the world record with a 36:20.
Not bad for a dead guy, huh? 36:20. Good luck, Taki.
Taki's Sum of Bests, which is a combination of your best times achieved in all levels, was a 35:46. Azure's Sob was even lower than Taki's, at 35:28, which means if he could match his best segments, he had the potential to play better than Taki possibly could. Not one to back down from a challenge, Taki went back to the world record grind. Taki had done something incredible. He had not only beaten the record, but broken a huge barrier for White's Rush speedruns, sub 36 minutes. Getting a time this good required insane strats, near perfect execution across all 96 levels, and steely focus. Surely a time this good wouldn't be beaten for a while. I mean, come on. A record this good had to stand for at least a few weeks.
There we are. I have no shaking surprise. Very healthy dinner from the McDumbles.
Azure was on an insane run. He had just made it to the final level of the game. If he played perfectly, he could get a 35:45. All that stood between him and an insane world record was one more battle with Neon Green. Heartbreaking. A near perfect run, dead to the very last level. Azure had just tasted the forbidden fruit, and he was hungry. He wanted the world record, and he wanted it now.
It's fine, let's do it again.
He had already gotten 1 great pace today, which meant he could do it again. But the chances of 2 world record pace runs in 1 day were slim. Still, Azure kept trying.
Oh. I'll take it.
A 35-36 was an insane time for this early in the game's lifespan. Azure did most of the same strats that Taki did, but he was saving time everywhere. Azure was implementing more slash boosts, more projectile deflections, and went out of his way to shoot as many enemy bullets as possible. Most important of all, he barely hesitated while performing all this advanced movement. One great example of this was his usage of fast canals. Compared to Taki, Azure was moving the entire time, hitting all of his shots on the fly, but he still executed the strat flawlessly. Azure did perform a couple of new skips later in the run. The first was Fast Mirror, where instead of following the level's vertical climb as intended, Azure sniped the last 3 balloon enemies with rockets, bounced between the explosive barrels, grappled onto the glass tower in the center, and saved just enough rockets along the way to rocket boost all the way up to the top. This strat saved 10 seconds over the casual version of the level. The second notable new skip was a more advanced version of Congregation Skip, the Seam Skip. Instead of the Leap of Faith off the right side of the level, Azure went to the left, and using an Elevate card that he saved earlier in the level, aimed his cursor through a tiny gap in the wall, and locked onto an enemy on the other side. The lock-on teleports him through the wall, and Azure finishes the rest of the level as intended. The Seam Skip was more complex than the Leap of Faith, but it was considered to be more consistent by top runners and saved about 3 seconds. So this would be the version of Congregation Skip that was used going forward. The 35-36 was only the beginning. It was as if the floodgates had been opened, and a storm had been unleashed. Because what Azure would do to the category in the next month would be nothing short of incredible.